everything is ultimately about dopamine. Everyone is looking for pleasure. Ultimately, that's the ultimate currency. No one is doing anything else. Aristotle was doing that while phrasing that. I am doing that while phrasing while I'm uttering the noises I'm uttering. The monkey was doing that while trying to break the nut. So everyone is trying to seek for dopamine. Why dopamine? Well, we've been designed to seek for the way our brains have been evolved to signal us that there's something going in a correct way is by that.
Well,
And
can I jump in there, Alex? Because I think it's a good point to illustrate maybe the dichotomy. I agree with everything you just said, quite literally. I don't say that for effect. I don't say that to be nice. I very much agree that pleasure is all we do and seek. There's different definitions of that, different time horizons. But you say why? Because of dopamine. Because we've been designed to. But why was it designed that way? Right? That's the obvious next question. And to me, that's what gets really interesting. Because if the answer is it doesn't matter, then dopamine is our God, in effect, in the way that we talk about God. Dopamine is the thing we worship. It's the most important thing in our lives. It is the creator of everything that exists because it drives everything we do at a very first principles level. I think most people would say that's not the answer, though. There's a reason why dopamine. And you can continue down a biological thread, which I think there's probably a lot of validity to. But at the end of every biological or scientific thread, it becomes philosophical, I think, right? But why that? But why that? What is your ultimate why? Like, do you ever go down to the end of that thread? And let's stick with that thread. Why dopamine, right? If we go all the way, what is your ultimate? Is there a stopping point?
Well, there's presuppositions. I'm assuming the existence of consciousness in some way. I cannot give you a rigorous enough. Well, not. I don't know if I can even give you a definition of consciousness at all. But there is some consciousness in me that points me towards what has been somewhat proven in the past to maximize fitness enough so that my ancestors have reproduced. And that is ultimately what has made me be able to be here. Just the successful reproduction of previous entities.
But are you cool stopping at that point? Are you? And I'm not judging it. You may very well be right. I think there's a lot. There's a lot of depth in that. But are you cool stopping at that point to say the biological or scientific explanation of how evolution has worked that led me to be here, like that is ultimately the first principle level answer that you're comfortable with, and then the whole rest of your life, your value system, the way you move through the world is built on that foundation? Is that kind of where you go with it?
That's where I build everything from, but that doesn't mean that I'm comfortable with it.
Okay.
I'm not comfortable with it because there's presuppositions. In order to be able to not have presuppositions, you would have to articulate in some coherent way everything which is required in order to start a dialogue from scratch, from absolute scratch.
Yes.
And that format in which you have articulated everything, but basically life or not even the existence of matter, you cannot presuppose that. So I have a lot of presuppositions in my claimings, and I'm not comfortable with that, but I haven't seen a way of getting away from those presuppositions.
And that's the dichotomy. I believe that's the dichotomy we touched on before, right? You acknowledge those presuppositions, you acknowledge there's unknowns in this, but you have to work with what you have. And that, to me, that gets right back to Tolstoy. I think that was his impossibility point. I have to work with what I have, but I know what I have is not good enough. So what am I supposed to do with that? It seems like for you, understandably, and correct me, you've taken comfort in, I've gone as far back as I think I can. I'm using science, the scientific method, biology, etc., as my framing, which most would agree is a pretty solid framing. And you're building off of that. And obviously you're here talking to me, and you could say the same about me. You're comfortable enough with it to exist and to function in the world and to have aspirations and dreams and goals. My question for you is there ever a time late at night, early in the morning, whatever, where you think about that and you go the maybe even cliche route of saying, but because of those presuppositions, everything I'm doing is kind of meaningless. Like I have no confidence to say that this is the quote unquote right life for me to be living. Like it's all an illusion, in effect, that we've had to. And I want to get into consciousness. I really do, because I have some interesting thoughts. I'm curious what you think. But before getting into that consciousness point of the illusion, just life in general, us creating meaning in it, making these decisions, feeling like biology or science is enough, is it safe for us all to acknowledge it gives us comfort, it gives us pleasure, which is why we do it, but in reality, objectively, it's not, it's no answer at all. It's nothing. We're all guessing at the end of the day. Are you comfortable saying that?
I think I'm comfortable because I've seen a physical limitation to the presuppositions. There's not a way of getting away from it, no matter how many of these presuppositions you solve by rigorously defining what I was claiming to be impossibly definable, which is the whatever you need to start dialogue out of scratch. Even if you did that, that information would have been put into a state which wasn't the life itself or the dialogue itself. There's an analog version of that. And that is presupposing something. So I don't think this is like the debate between an atheist and a theist. You say, okay, but so God created everything, but who created God? That's it. You're presupposing the existence of God. There's no way of getting away from this. Even if you respond, even if you respond, okay, this other God, bigger God and stronger God created this second God. But there's turtles all the way down. The ultimate thing that we cannot answer is, why is there anything at all?
And I don't think, and I'm not judging anybody, we all do this. I don't think we as a human species acknowledge that fact enough. I think we move through the world, probably out of necessity, probably out of pleasure, acting as if what you just said is not actually the case. And I don't know what the implication of that is. I'd like to believe we would be better off as a society if more people acknowledge that fact, because I'll go back to what it means for me. For me, it means I don't believe certainty exists in anything. I believe conviction, although sometimes seemingly a good thing, is never actually warranted. Nobody should ever be pounding a table on any belief, whether it be scientific, societal, like nothing, because it's all grounded and rooted in presuppositions that we can never get to the first principle level of. And with that existing, everything else is suspect and called into question. Back to Socrates' quote of, the unexamined life. Are you cool with that? Or like, is that a fair statement to say? And what do you think the implications of it are? The fact that people don't acknowledge that enough.
First of all, let me push back on what you said.
Yeah, please.
Are you certain about the unworthiness of certainty?
No, which is a funny thing, which is to your point, which I think actually proves uncertainty is the only way, because you can't even be certain in certain, you know what I mean? Like that doesn't even hold. But so yeah, sorry, keep going.
In the proportion that you accept that your claim is itself uncertain, you are leaving some certainty go into the system.
That's an interesting way to phrase it, and to put it. It's possible, here's I'll say, it's possible that certainty should exist. But inherent in that phrase, that possible word, is still an overarching uncertainty, even about, so it's almost like a big C, little c, like at the very macro level, certainty cannot exist, is almost what it is. Because even if certainty should exist, we would never know it.